Most instructional video says to remove the intake manifold and various other components, hoses, connectors, etc. in order to remove the starter. At least 2 people claimed that that is not necessary. I agree. After the repair, now I really don't see why people are saying to remove the manifold. This is not meant to be a step-by-step instruction for complete beginners, but rather, to point out a few things that one might question along the way. There is a service instruction out there which is only 3 pages of illustrations. It essentially said the same thing I ended up doing and the steps are not that complicated. Another thing is, I did this on the ground. The car remained on the ground. No issues at all. By the way, since this video was an afterthought, there are no pictures, videos in certain places, but there are other detailed videos out there showing starter R&R and starter rebuilds. These information apply to a range of years and models of Honda vehicles. This one is the K engine. Locate this connector and disconnect. Press tab and pull connectors apart. Connect a test light, or voltmeter to check voltage at the connector coming from the ignition circuit. Turn the key as if to start the engine. If there is a normal voltage, the problem is not in the ignition switch, or the starter cut relay. Connect a piece of wire on the other connector end. Touch the other end of the wire to battery positive. If it cranks, the problem is not the starter. Since this is just a demo, there is no issue on either end. But before the fix, the starter would only click. Engine wouldn't turn over. In the case where there is no signal from the ignition circuit, the starter cut relay is behind this panel. It will pull off with some coercing. Careful not to break the mounts. The relay is way at the top of the fuse box, where you can't get to it easily. This is the relay in question. The location is different for other groups of models. But if you can look directly at the relay, there is a marking that says STR cut, or something to that effect on the fuse box. Start out by removing the splash shield. 2 screws and bunch of plastic retainers. They break easy, so be careful. And no, I ain't gonna show how this is done. There is the ATF filter. Remove the bracket and move it aside. Don't remove the hose. Remove this bolt and a nut above. And move the bracket aside. No need to remove. Mine had a zip tie. Lift up this tiny tang and slip it out. No need to cut it off. There is a squeeze clip at top, clipped to a bracket. That's hard to get to. Or just cut it off and use a new zip tie. Push in this tab and pull out connector. Move the knock sensor. Knock sensor is 27 mm, but I used 1 1/16 instead. Starter is held by 2 bolts, 17 mm and 14 mm head. 17 mm is easy. 14 mm is not visible. For the 14 mm bolt, you'll need to work blindly. But no worries. If you're a mechanic, you're used to it. If you're a wannabe mechanic, you should get used to it. This was the only combination I had that would work to reach the 14 mm bolt. One thing that may be difficult, would be breaking loose the 14 mm bolt. No room for a long breaker bar. There is not enough space to move the handle. Use a regular ratchet. I used a swivel head 3/8 ratchet and a floor jack. I propped a 2x4 on the jack that's long enough to reach the handle. Use your imagination, here. Partially pull out the starter and remove the cables. Then remove the starter and bench test it to reconfirm that it is bad. Bench test the starter, use jumper cables and a small wire. When triggered, the motor spins weakly. Sometimes, it won't even turn. The gear, not extending fully, is not an issue. We'll see why later. Battery is weak, but voltage is not collapsing. Remove 2 bolts and cover. Pull the casing off. Hold the armature in place. Or not. The magnets will pull the armature out with the case. Remove rubber piece. It's just slipped over the plastic. The brushes were ground down, as expected. Compare with the new brushes. The ring bridges the main high current contacts that spins the motor. The contacts look burnt, but not likely the main problem. The new brush set comes with a new contact ring. The new ring is smaller, less contact, more resistance, more heat, shorter life. Oh, well. Remove the planetary gears. Plunger. Nothing was wrong with it, but replaced it anyway. This actually broke, but it comes with the brush set and the plunger. Carefully remove the plunger. There are 3 springs under the 3 arms. Don't lose these, if you're not replacing this part. Note the locations of the 3 springs. The springs must be seated onto these when putting back together. Note how things go back together. Clean the moving parts of dirt and old grease. Re-grease the gears and the moving parts. Brushes came with the springs out, as shown. This allows the armature to be fitted in without the brushes getting in the way. Push the springs all the way down. Place the knurled side down. Push the retainer onto the shaft and into the groove. Replace the rubber piece before the magnet case. When replacing the case, the magnets will tend to pull the armature out, so hold the armature in with something like a hammer handle. Otherwise, you'll have to redo the brushes. Grease the armature bushing in the end plate and install. Torque those bolts to a grunt, and an oomph. Test the starter before reinstalling. Check that it works. The gear still doesn't come out all the way. A little resistance will cause it to spiral out. I'm not going to show the reinstallation. Again, there are other excellent videos out there for that. It's mainly going in reverse order. The torque for the starter bolts are: for 14 mm, 33 foot-pounds. For 17 mm, 47 foot-pounds. You won't be able to get a torque wrench up there for the 14 mm. Do your best to tighten it. I'm weak, so I got it to about 25 foot-pounds.